Documentaries, the cheapest long-form filmmaking in the world. Real stories, real people, and real life. Now, don't fall for the hype about needing tons of money. We can shoot a fascinating feature-length documentary that gets millions of views on YouTube for under $1,000. All we need is some interesting characters, a dramatic story arc, and great access. The democratization of high-end filmmaking equipment has opened up millions of filmmakers around the world to shooting beautiful-looking documentaries. The small, high-resolution cameras and low-cost shooting kits mean there's no more technical excuses to stunning-looking films. But there's always been one massive problem. How do we edit it? Now, no matter what anyone tells you, editing is where the film is made. It's where the drama is created. It's where an exciting story structure with peaks and valleys is built. A bad editor can take a fantastically shot documentary with dozens of great scenes, compelling characters, and edge-of-your-seat action and turn it into a boring and dull film. An amazingly talented editor can take a bad set of raw footage and not only make it watchable, but actually save the day. High-end editing skills are what make the film watchable by millions of people. Otherwise, all we have is just a collection of beautifully filmed shots in an uncompelling story structure. So if you've shot a documentary or you're struggling with an edit right now, or if you want to infuse high-end visual storytelling techniques into your YouTube documentaries or corporate films, then you'll want to watch this episode. I don't know where you're at on your journey, so I'll start at the beginning. I'm Paddy Bird, and this is Inside the Edit. Much of editing is a succession of questions you ask yourself and you ask your client. The more questions you ask, the clearer the film becomes in your mind. So let's start with the questions I ask the director about every new film I start working on. Number one, what kind of doc is this? For example, is it an observational doc following a character over the course of an event? Is it a historical or political doc telling the story of a certain historical event or period of time? Of course, it could be anything, but once we know the answers to some of the basic questions, a picture will start to take shape in our mind of what kind of film this is. Number two, what's the rough story arc? What happens in the film? What is the story? Who are the main characters? What do they go through? Can you explain the rough series of events that take us from the start to the end? Now, the key is that we need to know the order of the events as quickly as possible. The quicker we have that story in our head, the quicker we can start experimenting with structure and giving feedback about potential ways to edit or spotting holes within the narrative logic. Number three, what documentary is this similar to? Now, a favorite trick I always do is to ask the client about a film that this might be similar to. Directors love it when you ask for references, as they may even have taken inspiration from some of their favorite films when writing or shooting it. This can give us clues into things like how it was shot, potential cutting styles, music choices, and pacing and rhythm. After this, the film becomes just that little bit clearer in our mind. Next, we'll want to go from macro to micro and really start to map out the first draft of the structure and how the client sees it at this early stage. For this, I love the bullet point exercise. Sit down with your director or producer and get them to guide you through the story in much more detail. Now, of course, this structure may all change once we get deep into the edit, but it gets us up to speed as quickly as possible. Now, as I'm listening, I'm taking it all in and writing out the story into bullet points. Here are some of the subjects and questions I ask when creating these bullet points. A, tell me the course of events in detail. B, tell me all of the characters or interview subjects. C, tell me as much detail about the characters as possible. Age, sex, relationship to the story, etc., etc. D, tell me about any separate narrative streams. And E, tell me about any character arcs. Now, with all of these quick-fire questions to the director and us writing down the answers, the film should now be really taking shape in our mind. The initial stages of the editing process are a lot like the very slow pull focus on a shot where things gradually become clearer the more we know. And it's at this point we're ready to start cutting. And for many of us, it can be overwhelming. So I'm going to tell you 4 different things that you should keep in mind constantly when starting to edit. If you do, they'll help guide you in many of your editing decisions. They are: number 1, structure; number 2, jump-off points; number 3, revelations; and number 4, tonality. So what the hell do all of these mean? Well, let's go through them. Structure is everything. Let me say that again for emphasis. Structure in editing is everything. We need to take the notes we made when asking our client all of those questions we talked about before and start looking at how they fit into some kind of structure. Now, a great editor will create a highly structured order of the progressive elements that happen by breaking down the film into individual scenes. A great way to do this is by putting them all onto Post-it notes and sticking them to your Edit Suite wall. You can then start practicing creating the structure by moving them around to test the narrative logic. Some films will have a very linear story in the storytelling that may well be very, very obvious. Maybe we're following a character over the course of a specific event. Others, for example, a biographical doc, may break down the story into 2 streams: the personal history of the character told through interview, the large events that they're famous for, and then intercut those together. Once we start experimenting with this, we're beginning to get the outlines of the film. Now, of course, we need to go in and start cutting all of the individual scenes together. But again, we've got an increasingly clear vision of how this film is looking. It's now we want to start thinking in a lot more detail. Individual scenes can be compelling, but how do these weave together in a story so that the audience is invested and continues to watch? Well, there are many different creative techniques we can use, but a major one in this early planning stage is what I call jump-off points. So what on earth are jump-off points? Well, these are the narrative springboards that take us out of one scene and into another, while still keeping interest up from the audience. They're also the logic in which we structure these scenes together within the timeline. So let's ask ourselves some more questions. A, what happens within the scene? B, what happens at the end of the scene? C, is there jeopardy or resolution or an unfinished question at the end? And D, how well does that ending relate to the beginning of the incoming scene? These are the pillars of logic that we must put up across our whole timeline. We need to test the logic, the drama, the jeopardy, the resolution, the screenwriting from one scene to the next to make sure that they're all compelling. Ask yourself this set of questions and start designing this narrative glue as you piece them together, and you're well on your way to a high quality rough cut. But there's also another great narrative tool to consider. Now, a key question I ask my students when talking about the structure of any particular scene is, what are the most important pieces of information that a character reveals or that is within the narrative? And when should we reveal them? Much of great long form editing is about identifying these moments and designing where and when they get to be revealed to the audience. Narrative or character-based revelations are like marble pillars. They are the foundation of any film, and so they need to be placed specifically on the timeline for maximum dramatic effect. So, here's what to do. A, write out a list of all the most important facts, events, and moments of revelation. B, look at your timeline in terms of duration. Are you working on a 30, 60, 90, or 120-minute documentary? And C, start experimenting with where you'd put these moments of revelation on the timeline in terms of the duration. Now, don't forget, revelation is progressive in the minds of the audience. Put yourself in their place and remind yourself constantly of what they know up until this moment in the film. One of the things I struggled with when trying to break into high-end editing was learning the language used in professional edit suites. Learning all of the terminology really does help when shaping your mind for every stage of the creative process. That's why I created this for you. It's a beautifully designed film poster that I call the periodic table of editing terminology. 50 of the most creative terms you'll ever hear in a pro editing suite. You can print it out and put it up on the wall of your cutting room or keep it as a screensaver. Just click on the link in the description below, head on over to Inside the Edit and download it right now. Memorize every single one and you'll start sounding like a high-end editor very quickly. And finally, the tone or tonality of the film. Now, I often get asked, Paddy, what do you mean when you say creating the tone? Well, the tone is the emotional feeling of each scene as well as the overall film. Events and revelation go a long way to keeping the excitement going in a well-structured film. But the tone is the specific stylization of the elements that is reinforcing the meaning of the film. So what does that look like in real life? Or maybe we've got a slower and sad scene where a character is telling us a difficult event or memory from their past. Now, if that's the case, I may create the emotional tone by cutting the scene at a slower and more introspective pace. I may also use slow music that will be in a minor key to create a negative atmosphere. I probably won't allow things like fast camera work. I'm building up an emotional tonality to the scene by choosing a destination first and a cutting style that emphasizes how I want the audience to feel. Now, of course, the opposite may be true. We may have an exciting or funny or energetic scene just before a big event or a race towards a stressful conclusion. To create this type of tone, I may choose faster music in a major key. I might put in quicker camera work, quicker, faster cuts, including crash zooms and things like that. Editing a documentary is an amazing but cognitively demanding process from a creative and intellectual point of view. It requires us to be aware of every single thing the audience experiences across the entire roller coaster of their viewing experience. And it's our job to design that for maximum effect, no one else's. So think deeply on these 4 every single time you start working on a new doc: structure, jump-off points, revelations, and tonality. If we constantly keep these 4 pillars of documentary logic in our mind, we have all the tools necessary to construct a beautiful and compelling film. Every film we work on will have a unique structure, jump-off points, revelations, and tonality, but they all have them. And it's up to us, professional editors, to find out what type should be used to make this individual film so unique. Therein lies the game. Thank you, dear friend, for your kind attention. I'm Paddy Bird, and this is Inside the Edit.